Hello and welcome. I'm Smiley, and today we'll be talking about boldness. So, right when I opened my eyes this morning, three things came to mind, and it was a story that I had read or heard about very, long ago, and two words: bold and incrementally. It's incremental. And I immediately knew why these two words came up as a result of remembering the story. I just understood what this story was saying about these two words. So I pulled the story up because I don't want to summarize the story. I would rather just read it out because I don't want to miss any crucial parts or rephrase it. So I looked at the story. And it's by correction. The story is not by Dan Kopp. The article about the story is by Dan Kopp. So the article starts off by saying, "This morning I was reading Doing What Jesus Did by Robbie Dawkins, and he shared the following true story. As I read it, I was convicted by it and wanted to share it with you. Here is what Robbie wrote. As she left the conference in Atlanta, Georgia, a woman was praying, 'Lord, I'll do anything for you. I'll do anything. Just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it.' In that moment, she sensed something and realized, I'm supposed to turn left. It almost felt like a whim, but desperately wanting to obey God's voice, the woman turned left. After driving a little while, she felt as though she was supposed to turn right. So she did. Filled with anticipation, she wondered, is God really directing me to do something right now? This is so exciting. Before she knew it, the woman ended up right in front of a little convenience store, which she sensed was the place the Lord was bringing her. Once inside, she couldn't wait to see how the Lord would direct her. But the only thing that kept coming to her mind was, go over in front of the clerk and stand on your head. Pretty weird, right? How many of us would reach that point and say, okay, no, that's not God, and get in our car and drive home? The direction the woman was sensing seemed odd enough that she could have easily discounted it, although it wasn't something immoral or unbiblical. She prayed, Lord, are you sure? But she felt nothing in response to her prayer. No confirmation. It took her a little bit to build up the courage, so she hung around in the potato chip aisle until everybody cleared out of the store. Then she walked up to the register and said, hey, look what I can do. There happened to be a pole right in front of the clerk, so she did a handstand against it. From her upside-down position, she saw him drop his head and shake it. She swung her legs down and thought, man, he thinks I'm crazy. A real freak. But as she walked up to the clerk, she saw he was actually crying, so she asked, what's the matter? He told her, about a half hour ago, I was sitting here working and I prayed, God, if you're real, have somebody come in here and stand on their head. So there is a lot to unpack in that story. There's a lot that can be said and dissected in that. Things about how the Holy Spirit moves, the quietness of the Lord. There's a lot that you can unpack. But if somebody else would like to talk about this, story, they can unpack that. What initially came to my mind was that boldness in the faith is not weighed by human standards. It's weighed by God's standards. You being bold may not look like somebody else is bold, but it's not any less bold, if that makes sense. God knows our heart, and he knows what things we need to conquer. So for one person, you may have to do a handstand, and for another person, you may have been able to easily do that handstand, but what you really struggle with is talking to 2 or 3 people. Maybe you're fine with talking to a small group of people. Maybe you need to talk to a room of people. Maybe you're fine with talking to a room of people. That makes you feel nothing. In order for you to be extremely bold about your faith, it takes you to speak to a stadium. Or maybe speaking to a stadium is easier. Maybe it's easy for you to speak to a stadium. Maybe you have to speak to your family about your faith. All of these things can be extremely bold. All of them. They can all be extremely bold. But whether or not they're extremely bold depends on where you are at and what dragon you're currently facing. Everybody's going to have their own dragon, and everybody's going to have their own extreme. So, to make a long story short, Your bold may not look like my bold, but it still can be extremely bold and produce the exact same spiritual effect. So yeah, I think that's everything about that has to do with boldness in the faith. And I'm not gonna, cap right now. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about the incremental word yet. Maybe that's next week. Maybe we tackle that next week. Because I've been trying to, as I've been talking about boldness in the faith, been trying to think about incremental. And I think I know what I want to say, but I think I'm going to let that one marinate. Okay, so yeah, I think that that's everything for this week. So, as per usual, I am not going to do all that, but